I brought a telegram for you.
Would you please read the telegram?
Of course.
To whom it may concern, the world will end on the Tuesday following next. Kindly please take all required actions. If you can build an off-grid home, you are encouraged to do so. Stop.
I believe we're going to need something larger than this tent. To build an off-grid house, we're going to need a hammer, a circular saw, 24,000 nails, a bubble level, 8,000 screws, money, and the experience of Praxis Prepper.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now waiting, better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape, find almost anything.
Hey everybody, this is Praxis. Recently on my channel, I did something so offensive that no less than 100 subscribers spontaneously unsubscribed immediately as soon as I did this thing. Now, what was that? Well, what it was is that I started re-releasing episodes for my most unpopular series ever, which is the series that documented the creation, the building, the construction of my homestead. In this video, what I want to do is give you a tour of that entire place. If you haven't seen the series, there's a link down in the description that you can check it out. There's a link up here. I'll do a little pop-up card if you want to check it out. And also down the description, there's also links to separate playlists of all the different things that were related to building the homestead. Right behind me is the root cellar, which is also a fallout shelter. There's a playlist specifically about all the episodes where I'm working on that. There's one just on the greenhouse, just on the gray water, just on this, just on that. So if you look down the description below, you can get topic-specific playlists for all the different things that we're going to be looking at today. So we're starting here on the outside of the fallout shelter, and we're going to end by going in there. But first, what I want to do is give you a tour of everything else going on around here. And one thing that you're going to notice is that it's not finished. This is a construction project going on right now. We're making a chicken coop. This is an 8-foot by 12-foot large foundation for a chicken coop. I'm not really going to get into a lot of the specifics of this structure because it's not done. I guess this will be in a future kind of full tour run through. But this is indicative of what you're going to see a lot of going on here at our homestead. While we've got an awful lot finished, I'm always thinking of new projects, and because of that, I'm always coming up with new things that I want to do. So the project as a whole is never really finished because I'm always adding new things. Now, there are lots of aspects of this that are finished and they're working really well, and that's what I want to show you in this video. But you are going to see lots of unfinished things as well, and I think that that's just a realistic thing to be honest about, is that if you are the kind of person that likes coming up with ideas and enjoys this kind of stuff, your work is never finished because you enjoy your work and you're always coming up with new versions of it. We're here next to the garden right now, and you can see an unfinished fence around this garden. That's a temporary fence that was thrown up just to kind of keep the chickens out, because the chickens were really making short work of this garden. I'm going to give you a quick tour of what we got going on in this garden. We've got a garlic bed right up in the front here. This is garlic that I planted last fall, and it does really well in this area. I did some experimenting where I was planting whole bulbs instead of whole cloves, and that worked out pretty well this year. That worked out pretty well last year, and this year I decided to break it up and just do one clove at a time and see if that changes the way my my yield is, if I get like larger bulbs if they're not so clustered. This plant over here, it looks like just some kind of random weed, but this is Jerusalem artichoke, and I'm getting pretty fond of this crop. It's kind of like a potato in terms of its nutritional content, the caloric content and everything, and it grows really, really easily, at least up here in the Northeast. It looks kind of like a little miniature sunflower when it grows. Are really, really tall. That makes it kind of a foolish crop to put where I put it, which is, this is the southern end of the garden, so it's going to shade everything else. At some point I'm going to be moving that stuff around, but the reality is I didn't even plant any of this. These are growing from just tubers that I guess missed when I was harvesting it last year. And I love crops like that just reseed themselves, and they don't really need you to do much for them. Right next to it is another crop kind of like that. It's some asparagus we get going in here. And then we're going to get into some of the garden that is more labor intensive. We got a row of tomatoes and some more tomatoes over there. We haven't planted this section yet. At the time of this recording, it's kind of mid-May, mid to late May right now. We got some potatoes growing in here. Now you notice the potatoes, I mentioned the Jerusalem artichokes are kind of like potatoes. These potatoes are nowhere near as vigorous as those guys were down there. So, you know, it's kind of a race between these two. And, you know, we'll see which does better. And that's one of the reasons it's really important if you're interested in things like homesteading and, you know, emergency preparedness, survival, that kind of stuff. It's good to practice these skills because, you know, you get better and you learn, you know, not only what you're good at, but what your environment is good at. Just over here, we're trying something, another experiment for the first time, is a decent size crop of corn. We've got this triangular shaped garden bed here. What you see in there is some sawdust. The sawdust was thrown in there to help the corn deal with late season frost. They just use it as kind of a blanket, but now they're poking up through it. We also have some beans that are growing around the edge here. So we've got beans all along the perimeter and then corn in the middle there. The next thing I'd like to show you is our firewood shed. We heat our house here all with solar energy because we heat with wood. Wood's kind of a form of solar energy if you think about it. The sun grows all these trees. They are machines that capture the sunlight and they convert it into wood, and then you can take that wood and you can use it for heating. And it's a great machine. It's a completely biodegradable machine. It doesn't create any emissions or anything while it's operating. I think a lot of times people, when they're thinking about green tech and living off grid and all that kind of stuff, they're looking for like technological solutions to things, and well, like here's a technological solution to something right here. This is a Prius, and you know, this has lower emissions while it's driving. A lot of times I'll be driving and it'll just be all on electric. But the reality of this is that when a machine like this is being created, there's mining that needs to go into getting the materials, or you know, the metals and the alloys, all the different rare earth minerals that are required to go into something like this for the circuitry, you know, for the batteries and everything like that. So this, while I'm operating it, is very clean, but in the creation of something like this, you know, there's all sorts of accounting that a lot of people don't tend to want to think about. Trees, on the other hand, they might be a little bit more smoky while they're burning. You know, at the time of this recording, Canada has a bunch of wildfires, and there's, you know, lots of that kind of smoke from burning wood that's going everywhere. So while it's burning, it does create exhaust. But in the creation of the fuel part of the process, you know, it's in fact it's carbon negative as it's absorbing it. So I think that heating with wood is a really great way to heat your house. It's a really nice, cozy thing to be able to do. You know, you go into your house in the middle of the winter, you're freezing, and you know, it's one thing to go into a climate controlled space and you're freezing, and you get it inside and suddenly it's like 70 degrees or 72 degrees or whatever. It's still, you know, you have that internal chill in you, and it's different when you can go right up next to a wood stove and put your hands right up to the wood stove and really warm yourself. We're going to see the wood stove on the inside in a minute, but first I want to show you, you know, where we keep our fuel. This structure is one that I built specifically for drying out firewood. I'm just going to give you a sense of what we got in here. This is not filled yet. We're working on getting this filled up for this year. But what I want to show you is some of the aspects of this structure, because this dries out firewood a lot better than what most people tend to create. A lot of times people just kind of take some old pallets or something like that, and they'll, you know, put their firewood on the pallets, if they do anything like that at all. Sometimes people just, you know, stack it right on the ground. This is stuff that's waiting to be split over here. If you're putting your firewood directly on the ground, or even just a couple of inches off the ground, you know, you're not really drying it out to its full potential. And that's what we wanted to do under here, is really work to the full potential. This thing is several feet up off the ground, and underneath it has a special feature that lets air all get up underneath there. Those are 2x3 slat boards. You can see the firewood right underneath, and this lets air get all up through the pile and allows it to dry way faster than it would if you were just you know, doing what most people tend to do. And if you can get your firewood nice and dry, it's going to allow it to burn a lot more cleanly for you. Not to say that it's completely clean when it burns, but it's going to burn a lot more cleanly if you are burning it while it's dry. So it's a good idea to do, and also you're going to get more heat out of it because it's not using energy to try to boil off the water while it's going. So we're going to pop into one of our greenhouses. Actually, let's just step back and take a quick peek at this. We've got two greenhouses on this house, and Here's one of them. This is the western greenhouse. This one tends to be a little bit on the warmer side because of the angling of the house. All the windows on the house face south, but they don't face due south. They face kind of southeast. And that was not by accident, that was by intent. And the reason I wanted to do that was because I wanted it facing where the sun rises in the morning so that we could kind of get some earlier morning sun. So it's kind of like a south-southeast kind of direction. As a result, the western greenhouse is tilted a little bit more out towards the south, so this one tends to get a little bit warmer. Before we put venting up in this, which we do have now, but prior to putting the venting in, it would get really, really hot in here in the summer. It was like maybe like 160 degrees in the summer up there. And then we installed these louvered vents up there, and you can see still under construction. We've got that tarp that's just there, that's for covering up the vent during the winter time. Now that it's summer, I've got it just kind of pulled back. Eventually we'll be making something a little bit more presentable for that, but for now, we've just got a tarp and it works. All right, but this is the greenhouse, and this is another one of those works in progress. In fact, the wall coverings themselves, you can see, are very literally and very obviously a work in progress. They're only half boarded up at this point. We've got rock in here, and we're going to be having gardens around the perimeter of this dirt area here. What's watering this garden is gray water, and we're going to talk a little bit more about gray water. We do have a playlist specifically for the gray water systems in this house. All the water from the upstairs bathroom comes out of here and goes down this chute, goes into this little cistern here, and inside we've got some charcoal. As you can see, we've got mostly green around the edges here. The way the system works is the water just goes into the pot, and the pot overflows, and there's a trench that goes right along here, and there's a citrus tree here that's growing, and the trench continues all around here and kind of ends right here. There's going to be a little waterfall feature here where it's going to overflow and then go down into this area. But at the moment, this soil here is all just, it's starting to hydrate. So it's awfully thirsty at the moment. And the water the water generally doesn't make it much past this area. In fact, this tip over here, I've been manually watering to make sure that these plants can grow. Well, the plants that we have in here right now is white clover. It's just kind of a ground cover, and it's a nitrogen fixing kind of plant. So I grabbed some seeds, and that's what's the majority of the stuff that's growing here. We also have basil in here. We have a couple of tomato plants growing in here, and these are pole beans that are going up the wall that we have there. Now, the only other thing that I probably should mention, because it's kind of conspicuous, are these white tubes coming up here. These are air vents that are coming from bathrooms. You know, if you're in the bathroom and you turn on the blower to exhaust the heat and humidity, those are coming down these little silver pipes here. Air gets blown down, goes down into the ground, goes for a few feet, and then pops back out. The reason that I had to go into the ground instead of just blowing directly is I kind of had this idea that it might be nice to have it moving through the cold earth in the wintertime. So you've got the warm air going through the cool earth, and it's a way of storing some of that heat from the inside of the house and transferring it into the earth itself. Also, I figured there'd be condensation in there, and the condensation might help to moisten the soil. As to whether that was a good idea or a bad idea, I guess I'll find out over time. Last other thing in here that's probably important is the fan. We have the fan in here in order to just give some agitation to the plants so that they can not get all spindly. If you grow plants in an environment where there's no wind at all, they'll just get all kind of leggy and spindly, and they look horrible and they're not very healthy. So having the fan helps. Eventually what we want to do is, instead of having the fan here, we want to have the fan hanging from one of these rafters here, and I think I'm probably going to have it run off of some solar panels that will attach to the walls here. So what will happen is when the sun comes up, the fan will be spinning, and when the sun goes down, the fan will not be spinning. This one here is on a timer, so it's on for half an hour, and then it's off for a half an hour. So we're gonna pop inside, and I mentioned that we have the gray water systems. I do have a playlist. It's down in the description below if you want to check out the playlist of how we put together the gray water system. But where all the action for that is happening is up in this ceiling here. When this house was created, this was created as a drop ceiling. All the plumbing is going through here, and what I did is I grabbed the water that was coming from the sink and the tub and the laundry, and I ran them through a couple of valves, and the valves can divert it either to go outside or to continue down into the septic system. And that was something that I did with forethought. While I was designing the place, I talked to the plumbers, and I had it worked out with them where they were going to put those pipes, because it was really critical, because in the future I knew I was going to be wanting to collect that gray water. If you look up over here, you can see that the plumbers obviously didn't always listen to my instructions about where I wanted pipes. The conversation for that was, when you run the pipes through here, make sure they're on this side of the floor joist there, because I'd like to keep them in the closet as opposed to out in the living space. I even wrote notes all over the floor upstairs, and I don't know, maybe it was a literacy problem, I'm not sure, but somehow the pipes managed to find themselves out here. All right, so let's kind of pop through this house a little bit. Some of the key features of what make this like a prepper house, because you know, what makes this place a prepper house isn't that I've got like you know, shooting positions all over the place and that there's Constantino wire and everything. What makes this a prepper house is that it is able to function really well even when the grid and the systems of the rest of the world maybe aren't working up to, you know, their 100% potential. And the key areas where that's important are things like making it so that it's warm in here, so you're not freezing your butt off, making it so you can have water coming in, and having some of availability of energy. So we're going to talk about those things first. So I mentioned outside that we were talking about firewood as being our key heating source. And here is our wood stove. This is a Vermont Castings wood stove. I absolutely love these types of stoves. I'm gonna apologize, I did not clean up before I did this video. These are, you know, it's paper material, and this is a good example of, you know, where some of our fuel comes from. This is stuff for next year. What I will do is, you know, as we are using up, you know, anything that has any cardboard related to it, I'll take that stuff and I'll box it up, and we'll store the boxes, and then all winter long, this will essentially be our kindling. You know, a lot of people, they'll chop firewood, and then they'll have to make sure that they chop some smaller pieces for kindling. This is my kindling, so I don't really have to worry about it. I take a piece of newspaper, I throw some cardboard material in, and then I essentially just throw in some nice full-size logs, and that's enough to get the thing burning. So I'm taking a waste product, and I'm able to use it for you know, some kind of a purpose, like heating the house. Now, I mentioned that I really, really love these Vermont Casting wood stoves, and the reason for that is they always struck me as being very well built. I've owned several of them. You know, one at my first homestead, I've got a rental property where I installed one of them, and I've got this one here, and they're just so versatile. You can cook on the top of them when you don't have a bunch of trash on there. There's a little griddle here where you can you know, boil water. In fact, this kettle is just kind of, it lives there all the time. I think that there is just a wonderful way of heating your home and cooking your food and boiling your water, and on the side, if you have wet clothing and you want to dry mittens or something like that, you can put them on here. You know, you get so many uses out of the wood. Now, someone could make an argument that you know, mini split heaters, they're more efficient, this, that, and the other thing. But again, it gets back to what I was talking about the Prius that I have. Yes, while you're running it, the Prius is very efficient and it uses less fuel, and yes, 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 yes. But all the stuff that has to go into making a mini split heat pump is different than what goes into making this, which is just a big hunk of iron, and there's some ceramic, you know, little windows in the front of it. So the environmental burden of creating something like this is different from the environmental burden of creating something like a mini split heat pump. And this is going to last forever. It's never really going to need to ever be, you know, refurbished or changed. I'm not going to have to get like new circuitry for it or anything like that. And you know, for the life of this product, you know, I got to imagine it's going to give mini splits a run for their money in terms of that, you know, the full life, including, you know, someday that mini split heat pump is going to find itself in a landfill. This thing, your great-great-great-great-grandchildren could use this thing. So I'm really excited about wood heat for so many reasons. It's comfortable, it's cozy. Yeah, I guess you have to, you know, lug your firewood in, but if you make a really insulated house that's not wasting a lot of heat, you can get by with very little firewood comparatively. Okay, so let's get off me going crazy about how much I love this wood stove and talk about a couple other things here. This is not part of the wood stove. This is another device. This is an oven that gets added in line. And all winter long, this is where we do our baking. You know, when we do pizza night, we've got pizza trays that we can put in there. I bake bread in this oven. We do lasagna. Anything where we need to do baking, this is where we're doing it, and it works exceptionally well. So you're chopping wood outside, and you're getting food, and you're getting a warm house, and you're getting everything else that is connected with it. People talk about this being the hearth or the heart of the home, and it really is, because this is kind of where all the action happens. It's got an awful lot of chimney going all the way up through there. The way this house is built is it's kind of a two-story house, but with a walkout basement. We're in the walkout basement area of the house right now. And I mentioned that we have all those windows, and they are faced in a generally kind of southerly direction. They're all facing kind of south-southeast. But where we are right now, this is a basement. Technically, that's what this is, and it certainly feels like it, like a cold, dank basement. Creating something that's burned into the earth has so many benefits, and it does not have to feel like a basement. This is a very comfortable environment. This is where our kitchen is. The kitchen is right next to the wood stove. That was a very important feature that I wanted to make built into this house, that you can walk very easily from the kitchen right into the right over to the wood stove, because a lot of times you're prepping food. You're going from the refrigerator over to the sink, over here to the wood stove, and it was really important to me to make sure that these things were close to each other. It was really important to me to make sure that these two things, the refrigerator and the wood stove, were not close to each other, but this is the best compromise I was able to get. In the kitchen, that was kind of the only logical place I could really fit the refrigerator, and what we're planning on doing, at the moment we have this little cupboard here next to it. I'm planning on building that out to be a full bookshelf that will really cover up the side of the refrigerator, and it'll have like things like cookbooks and some other kitchen related items, and that will act as storage, but it'll also act as a way of kind of shielding the refrigerator, because I guess I'm just kind of dancing around it. I didn't directly say why don't you want the refrigerator near the wood stove. Is because the refrigerator wants to be cold and the wood stove creates heat, so you want to kind of keep those things away from each other. Another thing that wants to be cool is a pantry, and that was another thing we wanted to have really close to the kitchen, and this is the pantry door right here. So when we need materials for cooking in the kitchen, we just have to go into the pantry. So let's go into the pantry right now, and we'll get a sense of kind of how we've set that up. Okay, so here is our pantry space. On this side, we have a bunch of 28-inch deep shelves, and the reason that they're 28 inches deep is so that we can, let's find one that's light enough for me to pull out with one arm. Okay, so we can take these bins that are, I guess, about 27 inches deep, and we can slide those in and out. I built the shelves to accommodate the containers that I knew I'd be using. Also, this whole bottom row here, this is a double stack of these, they're food tubs. This one here has white flour in it, there's rolled oats in this one over here, I see some whole wheat flour over there, and these are too deep. In my last place, when I built a pantry, I only made it deep enough so you could put 1.5 of these under the shelf, which equals 1, because you can't put half of one in, unless it's going to stick out and you couldn't close the doors. So I made sure when I built this is really important, is that I wanted to make sure I built the pantry space to fit what I was planning on putting in there. And that was a big learning curve development between my first homestead and this one. This shelf on the other side is only 14 inches deep, and the reason we did that was because there's boxes like these kind of boxes that hold cans of food, or there's this Tostitos kind of flat. These things tend to be about like 14 inches deep. So we built this other shelf here that would accommodate those types of things. Now, I guess I could have made that one 28 inches as well, and then you could just put them twice as deep. But the reality is we had a certain amount of space, and we wanted to have enough space that we could comfortably walk in here and not feel super uncomfortable as we're moving around. This space is kept pretty cool. We also keep a lot of our medicines and things like that down here to keep them in a cool, dark place. And the way that we keep this place cool is by two things. One, it's burned into the earth, and that is a naturally kind of cool situation. And in order to make sure that we keep it, a little extra cool, we get an air conditioner running. So we're gonna pop out here. At the moment now, we are at 60 Fahrenheit, about 15 Celsius. And the next thing that I wanted to stop off and check on this tour is something that happens upstairs. It's right up here. Let's see if I can get a good view of it. It's these vents right here. Now these vents, there's two of them, they are up at the highest point in the entire house. And what these things do is when it's warm up here, say we've been running the fire, and the vent pumps the air all the way down into a little closet here, and it draws the heat into this area here, and in there's a dehumidifier, and there's a hole with a fan that pulls all this hot air and shoots it downstairs. And that is a really important aspect to this house, is that we are capturing the heat that is going up to the top floor, which can be uncomfortable. You know, if you run the fire and a lot of the heat goes upstairs, it could still be, you know, only moderately comfortable down on the lower floors where you're, you know, spending most of your time, but a lot of the heat is going up there. What those vents do is they grab that heat and they push it down under the floor. And I want to show you how that all works down over here. Now the floor, as you can see, is concrete, and I did some, I don't know, you can tell me what you think in the comments below, whether you think that it's artistically interesting or horrifying. I did some paint work on the concrete, but this was just a, you know, regular concrete floor, and what we did was we ran tunnels under the floor. We took cinder blocks, and cinder blocks have holes in them, and normally you'd stack it so cinder blocks so the holes are facing up. What we did is we put them on the side and used the holes to make tunnels. The tunnels all come out here, out of this vent, and we've got a thermometer down there and everything, and it's blowing right now at me. You can probably see the spider webs on this thing shimmying a little bit. But the temperature down in there is, looks like 67 degrees or 20 Celsius or so. So this acts as a really nice moderating influence on the air in here. In the summertime, when you're feeling like you know, you want to be a little cooler, it's blowing all the heated air from upstairs, running it underneath the floor, and the floor, because it's kind of cool, because it's underground, is capturing a lot of that heat, and it is you're just absorbing it, kind of like a battery. And the floor just subtly warms up, just a little bit, not to the point where it ever feels warm to your feet or anything like that, but it's storing some of that heat, and then when it blows the air out, it's nice and cooled, and that fan just kind of goes on and off throughout the day. And I gotta tell you, that is one of the most powerful aspects of the temperature regulation that we have going on in this place. I read about it in a book that was about you know, like creating passive solar homes, and you know, I thought it was an interesting idea that you just take cinder blocks, make some tunnels, blow the air through it. But you know, having lived in another house that, you know, heated with wood stoves, you know, there's oftentimes this kind of like thing where, you know, you're lighting the fire and you're kind of having it run throughout the day. It gets kind of warm, and maybe it's a little, I'm not going to say it's warmer than I'd like, because I'm the kind of guy, it's like, I want it to be January and I'm walking around with like my bathing suit and a tank top on inside. You know, so I'm not going to complain that it's ever too warm in a house. But, you know, oftentimes it'd be very warm, you know, during the day, and then you go to bed, and then you get up the next morning, and it's, you know, pretty chilly. And that all really changed with this new setup that we have going on in here, where it is, it's taken the peaks and the valleys of our thermal performance, and it's filled in the valleys and, you know, with the tops of the peaks. It's kind of like strip mining, except instead of it being horrible, it's wonderful. And I think it is one of the best features of this entire structure, is the way that it handles that heat. And it's really, I don't want to use the word shameful, but I'm going to do it anyway. I think it's shameful that, yeah, I'm a photographer. I'm like a visual artist. You know, I do special effects. I do computer work and stuff like that. I have built 2 full-size houses and 2 mini houses in my life. And the fact that I can get it working this well on like essentially only my 2nd full-size house is really, really disappointing, I think, for people who are, you know, and I don't necessarily want to go after the people themselves, but the system the system that we're in that allows the kind of junk houses that get created that, you know, as soon as the grid goes down, their pipes are cracking, you know, like the water lines and their radiators are freezing and they're busting out and they just completely fall to pieces. And, you know, if you're not constantly running that really expensive oil, it costs thousands and thousands of dollars to heat these places. And if you don't heat them, you know, they just fall to pieces. You know, to heat this place, if I was going to buy all the firewood, it's somewhere around like $300 or so for the entire year. And it doesn't require any cooling all summertime because we're burned into the earth and we got the big thermal mass under the floor. So I created on my second try a house that you can completely heat and cool all year long for $300. And it's really disappointing that people who've made it their profession to do stuff like this. Again, I don't want to go after the people. I know there's regulations and people got to like, they got to roll with, you know, what's going on. Or, you know, you make a house nobody wants to buy it. But this was so easy. I'm a photographer, and on the second crack, I made a house you can heat and cool for $300 for the whole year. And that's if you buy your fuel. I get my fuel for free. It just falls all over the place. I pick it up, throw it into that shed, and yeah. Okay, there's two more things I want to show you on this whirlwind tour. We got an orchard going on here. This is a plum tree. We've got apple trees all around us. I think you probably can guess that we've got some chickens going on here. Chickens are loud. You always hear like the cartoon idea that like at the crack of dawn the rooster is going to be crowing and everything, and he does crow at dawn. He also crows an hour before dawn and an hour before that, and it's not just like once. It's like multiple crows over and over again for 10 minutes. And that's the primary reason why we're building their coop where we're doing it, is I want to make sure it's as far away from my sleeping ears as I possibly could move it. They were cuter when they were younger. Okay. I still love you guys though. They all have names. All right, so this is what I want to show you here. This is a mini house. I use it as a storage shed, but it's built as a mini house. And if you think about building something like this for yourself, but you're like, man, that's really, really big. In fact, in my series, my super unpopular series about building this place, I think I'm on like day 1000. So yeah, it takes an awful lot of time. But if you're interested in building something like this, this is a structure that people could live in. I built it as a mini house and permitted it as a shed. In fact, I don't even think it needed a building permit because it was under, like, there's a minimum square footage that if you're under that square footage, you don't even need a building permit. I kept this one like 1 foot under that limit, so I didn't even have to permit it or anything. But this is built like a house. We're going to go inside, and I want to kind of show you what's going on and explain some of the features here. Now, you notice, most sheds are just these crappy things that you get from, the hardware store or whatever. You pick it out, and it gets thrown on some cinder blocks. Well, we got this thing on, and I'll agree, it's not done yet. I haven't finished the stucco work. Getting there. It's on an actual foundation. So that's step one. We built it on a foundation, and the foundation is insulated. There's 2 inches of foam around this foundation. Let's go in. Okay. So think mini house while we're in here. Like I said, we're using this as a storage area, but it totally could be used as a living space. If you can imagine, I think these shelves they're a good like 1.5 feet thick on either side. So we're losing 3 feet across the width of this whole place just to these shelving units. But what we have is a loft area. There's a little hole there, and you could drop a ladder from that hole. And right up above us, you can have a bed up in there, like a bed in that part of the loft. You can see like there's plenty of room for the bed over there, so you could sleep up there. And down here is kind of like a living space. And I mentioned this has a foundation. This shed has a basement. It's not a huge basement, but let's go down there. And this is the basement. Now I'll put the camera down so you can get a sense of scale here. I'll kind of up over here. So this is how you have to move around in the basement. It's like this, but there's a lot of storage down here. We've got a dehumidifier down here to make sure that it stays dry. But this essentially doubles the square footage of this space. So you got your bed upstairs, so you keep that out of your living space. You can keep all your storage down here, keep that out of your living space. something like this is really, really economical. Building the foundation walls on this, I think we had them poured because we had the concrete people here when they were building the other house, and instead of doing it with concrete block myself, I just asked them if they could set up the forms and pour this. I think it was somewhere around $1,500 or so to do the foundation. For the materials to build the place, you know, all the lumber and everything, at the time of this recording, that was about like $1,500, $2,000 or something like that. So for about $3,500, maybe $4,000 at the top end, you get what's functionally like an entire house. And I think that this is something that's really achievable to a lot of people, you know, where you've got maybe a situation where, you know, you've got land or something and you want to create a bug out location for yourself. Building something like this, it's really possible, whereas, like, you know, the other place I told you was like 1,000 days to put it together, a heck of a lot more money. The number of days to put this together, I don't recall exactly, but, you know, give yourself 2 weeks and something like this could happen if you're having someone pour the foundation for you. If someone pours the foundation for you, the carpentry itself, to throw something like this up, is maybe a couple of weeks. It's 2 inches of insulation on the walls. I forget whether I did 4 inches or 2 inches on the ceiling. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it keeps it really nice and warm in here. And we built this structure as a storage place, but also to hold the solar hot water panels for the house, the domestic hot water panels. Just because that hot water fluid is moving through this structure, this place always stays warm, like all winter long. So it doesn't take very much to heat a place like this. And I think something like this is really achievable for a lot of people that, you know, maybe don't have the interest or desire to make a huge homestead out in the woods. You could create something like this. Actually, you can hear some of the plumbing going right now because I guess the sun came out and it's taking advantage of it. You can create something like this for yourself, and it's a minimal investment of time and a minimal investment of money. And, you know, worst case scenario, best case scenario, you never need it for like an SHTF situation, and it's just like turn into a cool Airbnb someday or something like that. So let's hop up out of here, and we're gonna wrap this up in the fallout shelter, which we saved for last because of the coolness factor. All right, just get ourselves out of here. Lights off, saving energy. Heading outside. These construction piles here are for the chicken coop. There's a bunch of concrete that is been used for the walls and is also going to get used for the floor. And we're insulating the chicken coop also. This is a bunch of pink foam that we got for that. And the rest of the lumber, we're actually we're using a lumber mill. We're milling up the lumber on our own. All right. So like I said, we saved the coolest thing for the last, fallout shelter. It's also a root cellar. There's our solar hot water panels up there. Let's check out the outside of it first, actually. A root cellar and a fallout shelter are so incredibly similar. You know, they both want to be underground. They both want to have insulation, you know, one from temperature fluctuations, one from, you know, radiation. There are so many common features between the two that when I determined that I wanted to create a root cellar, which was my initial desire, I decided I would add just a couple of extra features and just make it completely functional as a fallout shelter. What we're looking at right now is not just a bunch of weeds on the ground, but this is the ceiling or the roof of the root cellar, the fallout shelter underneath. These little things here are light tubes. They bring a very minimal amount of light down, enough so that you're not plunged into total darkness, you know, when you're down there. But when you're down there, you don't really have to worry too much about that because there's electricity down there, and there's the solar panels that are running an independent electrical system for the root cellar. It can also get power from the house itself, and it does. We can kind of flip back and forth. But if the house's power went down, we're off grid with the solar panels that we have on the house. But for some reason they went down, there was an electromagnetic pulse or something. Maybe there's a bigger system, bigger runs of wires. Maybe that one goes down. Maybe this one, you know, through good fortune stays up. You just get more options. More options are always good. All right, so let's pop in here. And this is the last step on the tour. All right. So you see right in front of you is some of the solar electric equipment that's grabbing the energy from those solar panels. And you'll also see that we go in and then there's a turn to the left. This is not necessarily for a root cellar, but it is very helpful for a fallout shelter. And the reason is that what we're getting is what's called geometric shielding. As you can see, the light is coming in the doorway and it's hitting this back wall here. And that is exactly what would be happening with radiation. If there was radiation outside, it would be coming from the door and just hitting that back wall. Now, if the root cellar just went straight that way, the radiation be baking everybody that's in it. But the fact is that the radiation just goes in straight lines, hits the back wall. It's not doing any 90-degree turns in midair. And all this section here is all nice and, well, radiation-free. Above our heads, we've got some metal, and then we've got concrete, and then we've got dirt. All said, there's somewhere around, it's like 2 feet and change of concrete and dirt above our heads. The structure is 8 feet wide. We chose 8 feet wide so we wouldn't have to put posts in the middle to support any of the ceiling. 8 feet wide seemed like the farthest width that we could do without having to put supports in. We've got lots of amenities in here. We do have a sink that drains to the outside, right here. Plenty of food in here. I've done specific videos on the fallout shelter, so I'm not going to get crazy into specifics here. Things of medicine, tech that we might need, hygiene things, respirators, even like lead clothing, things of that nature. Ginger ale for nausea. Lots of food over here. We've got cooking implements, all that type of stuff. We do have a dehumidifier here to keep it nice and dry. We've got lots of water jugs here. If we ever needed to be in here, we would want to be filling up water jugs with fresh water. But if for some reason we weren't able to get fresh water because the power went out, we have enough water to last us for at least a couple of weeks in here before we would run out of water. We've got bedding and blankets. These things here they're shelving units, but they're also bunk beds. We've got the bed rolls right on here, and this is really important to me for all types of emergency preparedness types of things that I do. I like it to be multi-purpose, so that I can use this as shelving. Let's say there's some kind of future and everybody actually does destroy every nuclear weapon on Earth. I don't see that happening in my lifetime, but if it did, I wouldn't want to be like, oh, now I got these stupid bunk beds in my root cellar. No, I've got these great shelves. I always like to try to make things that have double purpose, so even if one thing doesn't happen, you get some other kind of benefit. That's why this whole place is an active root cellar, so we can still use it and have been using it. This food in here, it's not just here because in the case of a nuclear emergency, we'd want to have plenty of food in here. We would, but this is also an extension of our pantry. Because this food is in here, it's not clogging up our pantry, so we can store more food, just generally. So, we're always trying to find, the way that we can get benefit out of a situation. Temperature in here right now, in terms of its root cellar usefulness, is 55 degrees. In the wintertime, in here, it stays at a nice 40 degrees all winter long. Never goes below 40, never goes really much above 40. It's a really solid 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like 5 Celsius, all winter long, which is a great refrigerator kind of temperature. We've got a couple of extra things in here. These are just ports for antennas, shortwave radio antennas, AM/FM antennas. We've got a monitor for our battery bank that we have here. The battery bank is hidden down into this floor here. We've got a kind of a trap door, and all the batteries are down there. We've got 10 deep cycle lead acid batteries down there. And that, I think, concludes our tour. So let's get this place closed up. I hope you found that interesting. If this is something that you would like to create for yourself and you have the enthusiasm to actually watch a video series about it, I created an entire day-by-day episodic series about building this entire place, and it covers everything. And by everything, I mean we literally show up here, and this is forest. It's just raw forest. The whole place just looks like this, and we turn this into what you see here. There's also you know, episodes that talk about just dealing with contractors, dealing with you know, the red tape of having to, you know, work with building inspectors, you know, whether they're helpful or deleterious. In my experience, actually, building inspectors have always been really helpful, you know, to my process. They're a person you can always ask questions, and they don't have a financial stake in you know, trying to sell you anything or whatnot. I know there's, like in any profession, I'm sure there's bad ones out there as well. I've never run into one. You know, we just kind of go through all that kind of stuff, and like, you know, the curveballs and the irritating things, because I think if you're thinking about doing something like this, if you'd like to build something like this for yourself, it's helpful to know some of the pitfalls that can happen, you know, to you during the process, for a couple of reasons. One, so that when they happen to you, you won't think that, you know, you're doing something wrong necessarily, that, you know, or you know, this project is just, it's cursed, it's a doomed project, I've just had so many problems. You want to see a doomed project, watch my series about building this place. While you know, it's right in the middle of the COVID pandemic, so we can't get any of our supplies. We've got contractors that are, I guess, try to get rid of the laughing and the smile on my face because this is part serious. We had contractors who have, like, you know, flesh-eating disease that was not taking them out of commission, you know, all manner of, like, you know, family members, you know, falling sick and dying, not even of COVID, but just of you know, a variety of, you know, whatever's. We had people like stealing, people, you know, accusing us of stealing their stuff. You know, there were so many problems with this. I recently rewatched the series to go through and retitle all the episodes so that they would have titles that were appropriate for what they were about. And in rewatching it, I was re-horrified. It's like, man, you went through so much when you were doing that. And I think it's important, if you're thinking about embarking on a journey like this, to see someone else has gone through it again. So like when you get those curveballs, and your curveballs won't necessarily be the same as my curveballs. I bet we'll share some of them, but I bet you'll have all new curveballs. But just knowing that this is part of what happens, and you just need to accept that if you want to get, you know, to the other end of it. So I did the series for that. There's also lots of tips about, you know, different types of carpentry, you know, tips on concrete, tips on this, tips on that. I try to work a lot of that in there, but mostly just getting a real sense of the scope of what it's like to build an entire house from the forest, from the ground up. But again, if you're only interested in certain aspects about making a mini house, there's a series of videos just about building that mini house, you know, just about doing the root cellar, just about doing all these different projects. I don't think I can put that many cards popping up here on the screen, but down in the description below, I'm gonna put links to all the playlists so you can check them out if you're interested. I hope you found this interesting. I'll be doing another video probably in a couple of years. When I do that one, we'll do a tour of this structure, because this structure, I've been actually outlining creation of this structure in the video series. But you know, we'll see it finished when I do like another one of these, you know, full run-throughs of the entire place. But more than anything, I just hope that you can get some encouragement, because doing something like this, it's a huge project. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot of aggravation, but it is incredibly rewarding. There's very few things that I've ever done in my life that I've felt have been as rewarding as learning how to take an environment that's just raw forest and turn it into like a comfortable place that feels like a home. That's a really nice feeling, not just because of the kind of carnal benefits of like, oh, I'm so warm and comfortable sitting next to my wood stove, but the idea, the knowledge that you know that not only do you have that for yourself, but that you made that for yourself. That is a feeling that so many animals, so many life forms on this planet have. All of them, all animals make their own homes, except humans. You know, humans have been, you know, taught to believe that that's something for someone else to do. Like that, you know, that's not something that I can do. But when you realize that that is wrong, and that you do have the ability to do that for yourself, and you do have the ability to do that for yourself, once you realize that, it is empowering in so many other ways, in so many other aspects to all parts of your life that, well, as you can tell from this video, I'm happy to chat anyone's ear off about it, because it's done so much for my life, and I think it can do a lot for yours as well. That's it. Thanks for watching. Hey, YouTube preppers, if you're serious about watching that video series about building my homestead, here's a link to it.